Hi, my name's James and I've been blogging on the Ouya for quite a bit now. This is actually blog number 20, but the rest of them are all in text format rather than video format, so don't go looking on YouTube for numbers 1 to 19 because you won't find them. But you will find them on my website, so definitely do check them out. Anyway, today I'm going to be talking about games as a service. So if we rewind a bit to the early days when Ouya was just starting out, and they had their Kickstarter campaign, they made quite a big deal about this idea of free-to-play. Now, free-to-play has got a bit of a bad reputation. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't like that. It's sort of all about sort of gambling and using psychological tricks to sort of steal away your money, which is partly true. It depends on the game and how people are using all those different things to sort of suck customers in or give them a fair deal, whichever one you think is appropriate. But what it actually comes down to at its core is this idea that games have stopped being a product. They're not a thing that you sell in the shops anymore. They're actually a service, so they're something that's ongoing and continuous the whole time. Now, I'm not just talking about MMOs. MMOs are the obvious example of games as a service. You know, you can clearly see that it's a service, there's a server there, you connect to it, you pay a subscription, and then, you know, if the server goes offline, if the service stops, then you can't play your game. But actually, a lot of games these days are games as a service, even though they may seem like they ought to be a product. Now, games as a service is actually a good thing in many ways. So, for example, for small independent developers, it means that they can put their game out and they don't need an enormous QA department. They don't need loads and loads of people testing it and making sure it's absolutely bug-free, because they can put it out there and they can essentially get people who are interested in the game and are fans to help them test it out after they've actually released it. Part of the reason they're able to do that is because they don't have to stick it on a disc in a shop. They can just distribute it through an app store or through the internet. So that's great. Unfortunately, there's some downsides as well to games as a service. So the big downside is that you're having to deal with a lot of people. If you're just one guy, you know, or you're just a small team, then you may potentially have anyone at any time sort of dropping in and saying, hey, your game isn't working, or there's a bug, or blah, 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 and you've got to fix it. Right? You can't just sort of make your game, sort of push it out there and then say, right, time to move on to the next thing, because you've got to keep constantly sort of looking after your customers and your players. And that could be a bit of a problem because you may be working on a model where you just have a one-off fee. So someone at some point just pays sort of $3 or $5 or $1 even to buy your game, but then they expect to constantly get the support and the help from you. So at what point do you say, you know what, actually I've spent way more time on this than the money that I'm actually getting in. The money that I'm getting is fairly static, you know, it's only coming once, but yeah, I'm having to keep working again and again and again. So it's a bit of a problem, but it's the way that games are going, and it's why you see a lot of games on Facebook and on the App Store, and they're all about free to play, because if you've got a free to play game, it's free, you stick it out there, and then you're getting a constant stream of money from people picking up the in-app purchases. They're playing the game constantly, they're picking things up slowly, and it's all about, you know, how many users you can gain and then retain, and, you know, what your churn rate is, and how well you can monetize these players, you know, how long before they sort of drop off the end, or, you know, how much money can you extract out of them. And it's slightly unfortunate, but yeah, that's kind of the fact of life. We can't really go back to an age where it's like you just stick out a game and forget about it. I mean, if you did that as an indie developer, if you put a game out there and it did turn out to have a bug, which is quite likely, then yeah, people would be pretty pissed off if you then turned around and said, you know what, no, I'm not going to fix that bug because I'm doing something else now. So yeah, tough luck, you bought it, and you know, you get what you pay for. So it's a bit of a problem, and it's causing lots of angst and anxiety, and people aren't really used to the idea because they're going into a shop and they're buying a game, but that game is not a product, it's a service. And it's the same on the App Store. You think you go onto the App Store and you're buying a game, actually you're not. You're buying a service and it's then the quality of that service along with the game itself that is what you're actually buying. So yeah, and I mean, just tying this back to Ouya, I mean, Ouya are basically saying that okay, the future is games as a service. That's where everything's going, and that's why they were so keen on free to play to begin with. Now, in the case of Ouya, you know, they worked out that actually a lot of free to play games needed a lot of people to support them. I think there was the famous story of Baking Life, a game which had 700,000 monthly active users, and it still wasn't making a profit even with all those people, and got shut down by the developers because they were making a loss even with that many people playing the game every month. So yeah, it's a matter of scale as well, and Ouya have kind of gone back to this idea of free to try. So they've kind of slightly backtracked away from free to play and said everything's got to have part of it that's at least free, so you can at least try the game out. So it's a bit of a fudge, but that kind of explains to you the history of where Ouya are coming from and why they've done things the way they have.